Okay, we're going to start off here with a few processing videos. This is the first in a series that I'm going to be producing, and you'll be able to view them in the um, place where I give you the I'll give you a link to go to, and you can view them at your leisure. We're going to start off with Lightroom today and go through a quick edit of a photo. I'm going to start off with this little photo of a kitty. And what I like to do when I first start is I like to make a virtual copy. So we're going to start off with this image here. If you press Command comma, you'll make a virtual copy. Now, the copies don't take up much space on your drive. They do, however, when you go back to the grid module, you'll see that there's the copy is here of the original file, and although Lightroom is non-destructive workflow, when you have a virtual copy, you can work on that and then save it, and then you still have the original file to go back to, and you can compare it to without, in case you want to change something in your edit. I find it handy. Okay, so here we go. Now we're going to go up to the Develop module. When I start to edit, the first thing I like to do in Lightroom is go edit. Lightroom is a top-down design suite, so it's designed to edit from the top down. There are a couple of exceptions that I like to apply. Remember, this is my workflow. It does not have to be your workflow. It's merely some tips and pointers that you might be able to work into your workflow. Whatever works for you is fine. So here I start at camera calibration. When you import your photo into Lightroom, it detects the kind of camera, the lens, and the lens camera combination that you have. However, under camera calibration, Adobe Standard is the default. So here we go in. We click this little box here to the side of Adobe Standard, and it'll show us it was my 5D Mark II, and its Adobe Standard is checked. Now, each camera has a slightly different flavor. Here's Camera Faithful for the 5D Mark II, and here's Camera Landscape for the 5D Mark II. Now, the Camera Landscape works real well for outdoors, for foliage, green, all that kind of stuff. Indoors, in this particular situation, I think Camera Faithful is going to be the best for us. So we'll start out with that. Then I like to go up to Lens Corrections, where we'll check off Remove Chromatic Aberration, and we'll enable Lens Profile. So when I imported this photograph, Lightroom detected the camera and the lens combination. Now, if you watch when you check that, you'll see the image changes a little bit. This is because it's correcting for any barrel distortion or pincushioning that might have occurred when it imported the image. But when you apply the lens correction, the profile correction, it changes the photo a little bit more to the way it should be. Okay, now we can go up to the top. I like to start out with a crop, so I have a rough idea of how the final image is going to look. So you just draw in your crop here, like so, and adjust it kind of like how you want it. Nothing is forever. This is non-destructive. You can always go back. If you want to go back right now, you can press the reset button, and that'll do everything that you have. When you're cropping, you'll notice the aspect ratio here. Okay, I have it right now set on the original. I have a few others here to choose from, but the original is 2:3 because it's a full frame camera. Now you can either click on the box here to reset or accept the crop, or you can click on return, and that'll accept the crop as you have drawn out. Now, in the basic panel, I like to go to the auto button. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a great starting point, It doesn't seem to be too good in this particular case, so we'll go to Command Z, and that'll return to the original raw file that we started out with. My particular workflow, I like to pull down the highlights a little bit, open up the shadows, and then work on the exposure and contrast. First of all, we're going to try and set our white balance here. This particular one looks pretty good, but we're going to try and see if it doesn't change a little bit. So you click on this little eyedropper up here, and you bring it out into a place that's supposed to be white. Now you look down on the numbers in the bottom of this target here. The closer you can get them to being the same, like we have 93.9, 93.3, 91.6, you know, that's real close to each other. That's pretty good for a white, so we're going to go with that one right there. And you see it changed the photo a little bit. So we put this box back up in here, and now we can try to, we'll take the exposure down a little bit. Open up the shadows a little bit more. If you like, you can set a white point and a black point. Sometimes it's useful to do that before you start moving. To set the black point, you put your cursor over the black here. You press Option, and you move the cursor to the left till you see a little bit of black show up, a little bit of color. Now to set the white point, you move up to the white, you press Option, click on that, and you move to the right till you get a little bit of color in the image. Now this has set the contrast ratio of the image to pretty much what it should be. Nothing's forever, but it's a good starting point. So I'm going to move up the highlights here a little bit. I'm going to add just a touch of clarity. Vibrance is one thing that you have to be. Vibrance can be used in several different ways. What it does is it increases the saturation, but it's different from the saturation slider. The saturation slider increases the saturation in all colors. Vibrance limits itself to the colors that are not already fully saturated. So we'll put that up here. Vibrance, you'd find a much more difference if you were editing a portrait. So now we go down to the tone curve. Okay, we might want to just add a slight touch of contrast there. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You notice we have a little bit of an S-curve here. We've done lens corrections. Now we're going down to the details panel. I have my default settings for 25:1, 25, and 0 masking for the sharpening. It's always wise to have a little bit of sharpening. Sharpening is a whole new topic on its own. We'll get into more on that later. But these are my defaults. Now I might change that a little bit if I want to bump up the sharpening around here. Let's see that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to try to mask it a little bit. So you press Option and click on here, and the whole screen goes white. Now, what you see is the white parts are what are being sharpened the most. This is more useful in the case of a image with something in the foreground and a blue sky in the background with some clouds, and you don't want them sharpened. So when you push on the masking, you'll see the black parts are not being sharpened as much as the white parts. Alrighty. Now we're going to add just a little bit of luminance, a little bit of contrast. I like to put a little bit of these sliders in just to see what we're working with. That actually looks pretty good. I might want to tone this down a little bit. Let's do that. We're going to go to the adjustment brush up here, and we're going to pick exposure. Actually, we're going to pick, we're going to go with exposure. So we want to pull the exposure down a little bit. Let's try about 1.5, and we select our brush, In this case, our brush, the size is 31.7, and the feather, you can tell the amount of feather by the width of this circle here. I like to have a good feathering area, then it doesn't intrude on the rest of the image so much. Okay, so we start here, and we just go around the areas of the image that we want to apply this to. And you can see it changing as we go. Okay, maybe just a little bit up here. Well, let's make this brush a little smaller. There we go. That doesn't look too bad at all. Let's go with that for now. So we press the close here. And that's not bad for a first edit. We'll maybe take this a little further next time in Photoshop. Thanks for tuning in. As I said, this is the first in a series of post-processing videos. Comments and suggestions are always welcome, as well as any requests for topics that you'd like to see in the future. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Al.